but it's just not on at all. Fear, anxiety that a virus is spreading to the country, they'll be left behind as everyone else is looked after. I don't think that is put us in a good light at all.
You might well have seen reports in the media about people receiving phone calls and letters from their doctor's surgeries that urge them to sign Do Not Resuscitate forms. I mean, just to clarify, the idea of these forms is if a patient's heart stops, the medical personnel on the scene would usually attempt cardiopulmonary resuscitative techniques to get the heart going again. But in some cases that's seen as inappropriate, in some cases it's not what the patient wants, and there can be valid reasons for that. But these letters and phone calls have caused a bit of a stir and a bit of controversy. Just listen to this. This is someone addressing a committee in the Scottish Parliament on the issue, and it's really quite shocking.
It's been quite confusing to try and establish why these happened in the first place. And one of the things I was really concerned about are who are the people on these lists getting phone calls? Like, what is the criteria? Is it an age? Is it an age plus certain conditions? To work out, I know people who would be 75 plus that didn't get a phone call asking them to sign a do not attempt resuscitation form. But then again, we've had colleagues and friends whose family members have. A tweet I saw from some doctor saying that the ministers had asked them to do this. So kind of thought about, has this happened? But asked officials in the Scottish Government about this, and they said we didn't. We had to respond to things we saw publicly and communicate with practices through the practice network to ask them, you do not need to do this. Now, they've found the number of complaints they've had about this, Scottish Government or the Health Department, decreased significantly in the last month, but we are still seeing examples of it. We're still getting calls to our helpline where people are getting these conversations, but also on top of that, their family members are leaving hospital, and there's a DNAR form slipped into their discharge notes. Now, these people don't have their own capacity that have been leaving hospital. They might have dementia, and the power of attorney isn't consulted. There have been administrative staff who've been calling up older people who, again, have dementia and have agreed to something on the phone. People didn't know what the devil in a DNAR form was, and they thought what this meant was, we're not going to get medical treatment. We're being left to die if we get this. But that's also coupled with examples where you're hearing, and again, they are anecdotal, so I can't point them. I don't want to cast too many versions, but of maybe GPs and medical folks saying, we're not going to be delivering kind of medical treatment if you get coronavirus. We'll deliver end-of-life care or just kind of make you as comfortable as possible. So all these things together are people going, right, I'm now 75, I'm being written off. And we've also an example of a younger woman who her only condition that she has was hearing loss. She got a phone call to say, would you sign a DNAR form? There is no logic in this at all.
So it seems that no one wants to take responsibility for this. I mean, where did it originally come from? Is it the NHS? Is it the BMA? I mean, the government's denying any responsibility for it. It's happened in Wales and in Scotland and in England as well. So it's quite hard to pin down exactly where it's coming from. But the fact is, this ethos, this culture is there with some health practitioners in Britain and in Scotland. I mean, there have been cases of these letters, phone calls being received by someone whose only health condition is autism, a learning difficulty. I mean, that is really outrageous. In the United States, there's reports of hospitals saying that they didn't think they should attempt to resuscitate coronavirus patients because they're worried the staff might catch it. And there's a rumour that was going to be a policy in Glasgow as well. It's been denied by the NHS, but the rumour was there. And you can see this report. But maybe during the coronavirus initial panic, people were thinking, we're just going to do everything we can to try and free beds. The NHS is going to be swamped. This is what we need to do. I'm not sure. Now, just to emphasise, sometimes it's a necessary and understandable decision to go for a do not resuscitate policy with a certain person, or for a person to choose that, because sometimes treatment is futile, it's got no or virtually no chance of success. Even if it did succeed, it would only give a very short extra lifespan of very poor quality, with a couple of broken ribs thrown in as well from the resuscitation process. So these decisions can be valid, but the thing is, you want an ethos where life is valued and the gravity of these decisions is acknowledged. Deciding who lives and who dies is of the utmost gravity. It's not something that can be treated in this sort of cavalier administrative fashion where you deal with people in batches. Now, I find it quite strange that these doctors, surgeons, are getting in touch with people and telling them what they think is going to be good for them. I mean, my experience with doctors these days is you really have to have to press and press for them to tell you what to do. I mean, I hurt my wrist a while ago. I went to the doctor after a few months, wasn't getting better. So I said, do you think I should go for an X-ray? They said, well, would you like to go for an X-ray? I said, well, it's not like to or not. Do you think it would be good? Should I go for an X-ray? Well, it's up to you. Do you want to know? Do you want to go? Well, I don't care. I'm not the doctor. I don't know anything about it. Do you think I should go and get an X-ray? No, I don't. Oh, that's fine then. I won't go. So it's funny. There's sort of reticence in that context. But when it comes to living and dying, there are at least some people in the health service that are treating it too lightly. Now, with these do not resuscitate phone calls, letters, no one seems to be defending it. But on the other hand, there have been plenty of people implementing it. Now, we want a value system in healthcare where life is valued, but to some degree, an alternative culture is taking root and it needs rooting out. Now, you can connect this to the bigger picture. Let's think about assisted suicide. Now, if this same cavalier approach, where there's just an administrative issue, it's a matter of what's going to free beds. Your life might be not worth saving. Maybe that person would also be quite willing to say your life's maybe not worth living either. So this attitude that we're seeing coming out here is very significant when we're considering the issue of assisted suicide as well. Because assisted suicide logically, inevitably leads to euthanasia. Because what about the person who can't take the poison, the person who can't actually commit suicide for themselves? They'll say it's not fair. I've got a right to suicide. I've got a right to die as well. So that leads to euthanasia. Once you've got euthanasia, what about people who are not capable of making their own decisions? Well, the usual way we work in every other instance is if someone can't make decisions for themselves, someone else makes those decisions on their behalf. And that would happen with euthanasia as well. So you'd have involuntary euthanasia. So if you've got a healthcare system that's involving professionals that call people out of the blue, inviting them to sign a do not resuscitate form, sometimes without really understanding what they're doing, then when assisted suicide's around, how's that going to translate? I think that's a valid concern. Now, assisted suicide will come back to the Scottish Parliament. It's been defeated twice by a decreasing margin the second time. I mean, the Conservative leader Jackson Carlaw is a big proponent of it. Michelle Ballantyne, the Conservative MSP, is a big promoter of it. She might well be one of the ones central to pushing forward a new bill. It's already the official policy of the Greens and the Lib Dems. The previous bill, had it passed, would have seen 16-year-olds travelling around Scotland with a pack of poison, going from one house to another, delivering the poison to people for them to kill themselves. But thankfully it was defeated, but it will be back. I think generally in the population as a whole, support for assisted suicide is growing. A big factor in that is the fact that the BBC is the cheerleader for assisted suicide, and the media in general are incredibly biased on the issue. I once debated this with Patrick Harvey, and I said to him, if you were talking to a group of teenagers, and one of them put their hand up and said, is suicide ever a valid option when you're facing problems in life? What would you say to them? And I said to Patrick Harvey, I said, my answer would be no, it isn't. What would your answer be? This answer obviously has to be yes, but he didn't answer the question. And this was years ago. I'm still waiting for an answer from Patrick Harvey. I think obviously we'll never get one. So people have rightly been concerned and angered by these letters and phone calls to people. And the MSPs were concerned as well. But what they didn't do was connect it with the bigger picture. We need to strike to the root of the problem, and that's the devaluing of life. If we disregard the fundamental moral boundaries that are needed to protect it, then we're going to end up in pretty dark territory. So if you want to support a culture of life in Scotland, one way is to vote for the Scottish Family Party. And if you really want to see that culture of life protected, one way of doing that is by joining us. There's a link below. Thanks for watching.